Hello, and welcome to the first episode of our podcast for Wealth Mosaic in Conversation. I'm Douglas Thompson, editor and head of content at the Wealth Mosaic. This is the first in a series of episodes in which Wealth Mosaic will be exploring the evolving landscape of wealth management through conversations with the leading figures in wealth management around the world. But to begin with, we wanted you to hear from us directly, to hear the people behind the Wealth Mosaic. So in this first episode, I'm joined by our founder, Stephen Wall, our managing director, Mungo Hamlet, and our strategic advisor, Michael Partnow. I'll let them introduce themselves to you now. Stephen, over to you.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Douglas. Stephen Wall, founder of the Wealth Mosaic, started this business almost a decade ago, right? I'm a little bit grayer, older, tireder, but excited to be here on the first in-house conversation around Mosaic and what we're doing.
Mungo, who are you?
Thanks, Douglas. Thanks, Stephen. I'm Bungo. I'm the managing director here at the Wealth Mosaic. Spent the last, feels like maybe 5 to 7 years working alongside Stephen, building what you all know as the Wealth Mosaic today.
And lastly, Michael, tell us about yourself.
I am super grateful to be here. I have not had the pleasure of calling myself a rookie in quite a long time, spending over 30 plus years in financial services, but I guess I'm the rookie here, 18 months in, and just thrilled to be here overseeing commercialization, strategy, and primarily growth across the US.
That's awesome. Right, let's talk a little bit about the Wealth Mosaic itself. Stephen, you founded the Wealth Mosaic. You recently wrote an article for Mosaic magazine called "Why I Founded the Wealth Mosaic." So maybe you might be able to answer this question. Why did you found the Wealth Mosaic?
Clearly, Douglas, I didn't do a good enough job in the article in the Mosaic magazine, did I, last month in terms of why I built this thing, or started to build this thing. It was really a combination of three things. So there was some personal stuff, there was some career stuff, and there's some industry stuff. If I think about the career side, I won't go into the personal stuff. If I think about the career side, we're talking about I'd been in the industry 10, 12 years. I felt like I had enough experience and knowledge to do something on my own. I kind of felt like the world that I was working in was on the down low. It was moving into the background. It wasn't as relevant as it could have been. I won't name names, but you can have a look at my profile on LinkedIn to see more. And then in the industry, I saw wealth management as an arena that was going to change significantly because of a range of different factors. And one of the big things that was happening, there was a lot more tech coming into the space. So wealth management hadn't been full with a lot of technology historically. A lot of what had been used in the industry had come from elsewhere. It wasn't purpose built. It wasn't built for wealth, as we said. But we really saw that starting to change. And as an analyst working with consultants and private banks and external asset managers and family offices and all sorts of different firms around the world, there wasn't really a great knowledge of everything that was out there. So the founding principle of the Wealth Mosaic was to build a vendor directory, to put in place all of the offerings to the industry around the world. So from a vendor perspective, it became sort of a marketing resource, a place for them to position themselves. And for wealth managers, it was an accessible sort of single place of discovery. So they could see what was out there that could meet their business needs. That was the foundation of the platform. And then it's kind of evolved from there as the sort of idea of community, as the idea of content, as the idea of supporting a changing industry has evolved for us here at TWM.
Hey, Michael, you came on board after a pretty long career in the industry. What was it
Yeah.
you saw in the Wealth Mosaic that made you want to join in with us?
I was immediately impressed, amazed. It's ironic. As Stephen was talking, I don't know if this came across the podcast, but I heard some birds chirping and singing there. And I think that was sort of the sound that I heard in my head, which is kind of ironic here. There's a tremendous need in our industry to provide the truth, to create a community. And honestly, when I looked at the Wealth Mosaic and I looked at the disciplines and what Stephen and Mungo had built and are continuing to build, I said, how do I become part of this? How do I help our industry advance from a content perspective and to create this really powerful global community? And I'm honored. It's a privilege to be here every day, on behalf of our industry. And that's what folks are most excited about, is providing a global source of truth and to be part of a global community of peers. What such an exciting thing to be part of and such a true need in our industry.
Mungo, what's your perspective on what the Wealth Mosaic is offering the wealth management industry today?
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, I think Steve touched on it really nicely there in terms of that kind of founding principle around the directory, right? It's an absolutely crucial resource that we see in the market, and you know, from its founding day of 2017, now sitting here in towards mid 2026, we've changed a lot, right? We've evolved a hell of a lot. We're now kind of sitting in the position of being a multi-service agency, absolutely powered by that unique market-leading directory knowledge platform, but ultimately with a lot more deeper, impactful services sitting around that, you know, founding principle. Whether that be, you know, this deeper knowledge hub. You know, if we just look at this year to date, I think we've published over 350 knowledge resources for the global wealth management industry. 3 reports, 3 research papers, a number of events, and we're not slowing down anytime soon. The event platform for us, you know, in part of our offering is something that we've developed over the last couple of years, really. We're kind of looking at over the bows of 20 events, and we look to do a lot more, right? Our key markets are asking for this. You know, we're very feedback based, and we look to do more in that space, connecting top level executives together in meaningful, insight driven sessions is absolutely what the industry is asking for. So we're doing a lot more of that. The publisher side of the business, we continue to grow from you know, my early days of joining the Wealth Mosaic from a design perspective, actually, to today, where we're, you know, I think we're 35 reports deep, and we've launched our new Mosaic magazine. So our spring issue went out a couple of months back, and we're working hard on our summer issue. The idea around that is just very much having a much more kind of centralized editorial vehicle. For many reasons, but ultimately for our readers. You know, they want to see the range of insights and trends and developments and innovations in one single source. It also helps being a lot more manageable in-house. So, you know, we're doing a lot, right? And I think the key here is that we're doing it for a very, very clear reason, and that is, like Michael touched on earlier in the podcast, we want to be that global single source of truth, right? All of these indicators are aligned to delivering a really unique solution that helps wealth managers in discovery, as Stephen mentioned, which enables solution providers, our client base, to position themselves. And ultimately, Stephen and I's view on this is we will always create what is being asked for. So we have a very collaborative approach with our community and our clients to make sure that we're creating service verticals that make sense. That leads us to kind of more the research side of things and the agency, right? If we're building a global platform, we're generating 400,000 annual users. Naturally, we'll then shift into agency models, you know, advertising, content positioning, digital tactics. So we're starting to really build a well-curated set of services, I'd say.
You know what's interesting, Douglas? Can I add there?
Yeah.
I really like Stephen and Mungo's comments there. And as the audience listens to this, it's not about complexity, rather it's about optionality.
Yeah.
So I just want to repeat that. It's not about complexity, it's about optionality. And what we've done here over the past few years is we've recognized that one size does not fit all. That's where some enjoy receiving content via podcasts or listening. Some like to read, and we have the content that's available there. Some enjoy in-person events, and even there's not a one size fits all. So we have our larger scale events, you know, call it, you know, 150 to 250 senior executives by invite only. And we also have our more intimate Hive events where we're looking at 15 to 20 thought leaders having a conversation around a roundtable. So again, it's not the complexity, it's that we're satisfying a global need here and also individuality, which is really nice.
Yeah, and you know, from the point of view of somebody, you know, leading our content operations, I think that having multiple strings to our bow, many different ways in which you can engage with us, is really important because different different companies, different individuals are going to feel comfortable engaging with us in different ways, right? And that's why having a podcast, I think, is a really great addition to the mix. You give people the opportunity to engage in a more relaxed, more open, but also slightly more in-depth manner.
I think for
Yeah.
you as head of content,
Mm,
certainly I have the utmost respect here because optionality is not what a head of
exactly.
content likes to hear, but you do a magnificent job of pulling it all together and satisfying those individual needs to learn. It's very well done.
I think just to back up what has been said, actually, one of the founding reasons I started to build this was as an analyst, you'd have so many conversations with people that you couldn't get in a report, right? You could only have small elements, and some of them weren't that interesting. But there were lots and lots of conversations, and they just stayed in a notebook, or they stayed, somewhere that wasn't sort of publishable. They weren't accessible to their peers and to the market. So a podcast makes a lot of sense. It's kind of maybe in some ways strange that we haven't done it before. Obviously, we've done lots of different things: video interviews, webinars. We do our events. We do a lot of content in our reports, but it did feel like the podcast was the one thing that was missing. And obviously, they're very popular now. I myself like to consume podcasts and all sorts of different things. I know not necessarily related to wealth management, but to other stuff. So it felt like this was a necessity for us. But in terms of why we do it, we want to speak to people. We want to bring people into the conversations. We want to speak to different executives, different leaders, look at the challenges they're facing, learn about them as individuals, kind of bring a little bit of personality to it, see what things they're looking at for their business, see what direction of travel they're heading in. So we want to do it in different geographies with different wealth segments. So, family offices, RIAs, broker dealers, enterprise level wealth firms, talking to them in the US, in the UK, in Switzerland, Singapore. And equally, we want to speak to their service providers, a lot of the firms that we interact with. So it might be a tech firm, it might be a consultant, it might be a law firm, trust firm, PR and marketing, branding agency. There's all sorts of people that should be involved in the conversation that can bring insights and ideas and, frankly, just health to the community. So the Wealth Mosaic in Conversation is a vehicle. We want to do it as frequently as possible, not just me hosting, but a broad range of people. And we want to have as many interesting conversations with people who are driving change in this industry as possible.
Where do you think this podcast fits into the content mix?
I think if you look at our report background, so we've written something like 35 reports to date across a range of geographies and segments and topics. They're quite heavy sometimes, and they're not getting into necessarily the background of a leader. They're not getting into the sort of the personal view of an individual. They're much more sort of corporate thought leadership content. We want the podcast to be complementary to the topics that we're focusing on. So, if we're hearing a lot about AI, then we'll seek to speak to people about that. We want also this to be complementary to the firms that we work with. So some of the vendors we work with really want to bring a personal story into the industry over and above their brand and their product. So they want to get their executives, their leaders, their founders into the market. We see the podcast as being a strong vehicle for that. Equally, from a business development perspective on our side, and I don't mean revenue generation, I mean just the mix of what we do, we want to engage more with the wealth management community, those who have the challenges, who are buying the services, who are looking at servicing, end clients and all of the trends and demands that brings with it. So it's really about building out a flexible tool that can be easily engaged with in terms of our community, but also can be easily consumed also in terms of our community.
Yeah, and I think if you zoom out and you look at our entire content offering, this is offering a different niche, isn't it? The podcast medium allows a more conversational, relaxed discussion than you get when someone's got a camera pointed at this. I see this a lot when we're doing interviews, right? People kind of clam up, they try and remember their script, whereas if they're just having a conversation with you or with me, they just say what they're thinking. And we do
Exactly.
and we do a lot of great video content, and people should absolutely look it up. But it's generally shorter, it's more bite-sized, it's often a little bit more rehearsed. whereas a podcast offers the opportunity to kind of like really just lean into your ideas and sort of like even kind of like road test them a little bit. And it's also just more portable. I mean, you can listen to Wealth Mosaic while walking your dog or doing the ironing, and who doesn't want to do that?
Exactly. What it's like the dreamland.
Yes, exactly. Um,
Plus, Douglas, let's not forget, you're scary, right? You're scary
yes,
to a lot.
I'm a very scary person, as anybody who's ever met me.
Editors are. When I hear that this is going to go through editorial, I said, "Oh boy!" But a podcast allows for the individual to be natural, to have a natural
Mm,
dialogue. Of
mm,
course, there's editorial at the end and piecing things
mm,
together and doing all of those things here, but it allows for a fluid
mm,
conversation, which is really, really what I think senior leaders have come to expect.
mm. Yeah. I mean, Mungo, you're really at the coalface of making sure that everything happens here at Wealth Mosaic. Like, what do you think this podcast means for our for our content offering and from a point of view of our members, what benefit it offers to them?
Yeah, fantastic. I think I think you guys have really well rounded, you've touched on every aspect of what it means to deliver a podcast and why it matters. I mean, what we care about here is also, giving people voices, right?
Mm,
Editorial or, hosted content or digital content, something that gives a task for someone to read versus just quietly, calmly listening to a podcast, I think is the direction of travel for a lot of consumption these days. The reality is, um, the Wealth Mosaic is changing, right? We know that there
mm,
are opportunities in terms of content marketing. We know that the video, we understand that podcasts, we know that short video and reels is the direction of travel. It's not just the great wealth transfer in terms of wealth management. It's just the shift in terms of that younger generation and what they expect, how they want to
yeah,
consume
yeah.
content, right? So I think it's a massively important piece. It's something that I think actually Stephen and I came up with as an idea in 2022 or something, or 2020 even, when we were in Singapore. Just saying, look, let's get some voices, on the platform. I think equally, speaking to one of our colleagues out in the US when we were out there earlier this year, it's also about giving a conversation to the people behind this change, not just what's happening, what the offering is, what's the industry themes that we, quite aware of. It's also saying who's behind that change, and I think that's a very unique, uh, element that the podcast can deliver against other more traditional content types.
Mungo, you always seem to nail it, and once again, you've done it there. I think a real challenge for organizations is they seek the outside voice, but it's always the inside voice that's being heard.
Mm,
And essentially, what you've described is the fact that we have the ability here to democratize access and allow those global viewpoints to be heard by individuals that may not have an opportunity or may not have a podium to stand behind to express these critical views here. So I love the fact that you're really highlighting what we're doing is we're democratizing access and we're
mm,
allowing the outside voices that we should be listening to as leaders to come into our heads here rather than just hear from our own internal employees, which also brilliant, but it's nice to have that real outside viewpoint, and it's a global viewpoint, and that's something that's really, really powerful.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, this is the feedback we get as well. The reason why we're investing more in events now, similar to the podcasts, similar to video to a certain degree, is that people want to hear from people. People want to connect with people. In a post-COVID world, we're all staring at screens, and actually taking a break from that and engaging with real
mm.
human voice is a massive part of what we see as part of the content strategy going forward. So absolutely, getting behind the scenes and understanding people's stories, because I think that's what people want to learn and live in. When you think about the C levels or the senior leaders in this industry, these people are characters. Michael, you
Mm.
often say, the type A personality type as a core foundation of these leaders. These guys have stories, and we want to create a platform to share them.
Yeah, this you mentioned the events, and it's not for the faint-hearted, is what I believe. If folks got to literally lift up the curtain and see what takes place there, and Mungo, how you pull it all together and make it look like a flawless effort without sweating and doing all those things. But it truly is an honor to allow these real thought leaders to express their opinions and just to be part of that conversation. Again, I use the word honor. We truly are grateful for that opportunity to get others out there who we feel have those voices. And it's not about yesterday. Many events focus on what happened yesterday or what will happen 3 to 5 years from now. We really focus on the now here. And Stephen talked about the fintech organizations that we're coming across, and these solutions are available now. These are not drawings. These are not roadmaps that they're talking about. They're talking about changing the state of the industry today.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the great challenges we have here of Wealth Mosaic is catering to this market that, like Mungo said, is full of Type A personality types and has the needs of Type A personality types. I remember first event I was at of Wealth Mosaic. I was just making conversation with somebody, and we talked about the personality types in this market, and I just mentioned offhand, oh, I don't really consider myself to be a Type A personality type, and they looked at me as though I told them that I was an alien. And everybody said, you don't think you're a Type A personality?
Wrong
Like,
place.
what's wrong with you? It's just because those are the people who exist in our market, and they have very, very strong content needs, strong needs that we are there to service, and that's what we always have to bear in mind here at Wealth Mosaic when we're servicing this market.
But you know what? It also is really nice. Like, it's so incredibly rewarding when you look at a round table or a Hive conversation, or you get a live event and you see a senior developer that may not be Type A talking to
Mm.
a CEO, or a CEO that is more on the introverted side talking to a group of his peers. We're creating that type of community also, where individuals feel incredibly comfortable just being themselves and expressing their individual thoughts in an open setting, and they're expecting to be challenged, not just agreed to or going with industry norms. They are defining and setting trends here that will impact generations to come, and that's really, really, really important to us.
Yeah, that word community you used there, Michael. But I think that's really central to the way in which I view the Wealth Mosaic. I came to Wealth Mosaic from a legal and financial journalism background, and I was serving pretty niche communities of lawyers in arbitration, debt restructuring, financial regulation, and people doing similar things create communities within themselves, and communities need community centers, and that's who we are, I think, right? And those community centers need to cater for different parts of that community who've got different needs, and bearing in mind that not everybody's the same. Whether you may be a large a large firm or a small family office, or you may be a big private bank or something like that. But it's what we do has to appeal to everybody and cater for everybody, include everybody.
Absolutely. I think, touching on that as well, Douglas, I think it's a critical point that Stephen mentioned earlier on the podcast as well, is, we're connecting a number of different multi-stage businesses, right? Like you say, from startups all the way through to, institutions that have been around for time eternal. The point of the Wealth Mosaic is to, quite often Steve will mention it, we're kind of democratizing access to the wealth management industry, and also giving a platform to those vendors, whatever size, whatever stage they may be. It's innovation first. It's, does this tool make a difference in my business? And therefore we can have that conversation. And I think, to the conversation point, even touching back into events, the best moments I've ever drawn from our events is those Q&As, those moments when you're sat in Zurich at Google, or you're at EY earlier this year, and you're sat around and people are just openly, challenging each other's ideas and connecting in a deeper sense rather than just the smile and wave, the nod to the keynote. I think that's really important. I think it's something that we'll really lean into going forward within our event model.
Maybe we should kind of give our listeners just like a bit of an idea of what's coming down the tracks.
2 big events this year. So we're going back to Switzerland for our third large one-day event. Different name as we consolidate the name globally, but the Wealth Mosaic Live 2020-26 Switzerland in Zurich on October the 1st at the 6th Convention Point. Then the sister event in the US in New York on November the 2nd, so the Wealth Mosaic Live 2026 US. Both are one-day events running through the sort of leading technology topics that are driving change around wealth management, both globally as well as within each individual jurisdiction. In June, we have probably our second UK AI-focused event, AI in Wealth, June the 25th. So we're bringing the industry together to learn, discuss, network, and hear some, or watch some demos rather of leading tech players in and around AI and what they're doing. Then we're doing a similar event in Singapore on July the 14th. And then after that, we've got a couple of things going on. So post the summer, we've got our first Hive event running into reality. Hives are roundtables that bring together the industry to talk about topics. The topic running into reality is effectively how to improve the return on investment of technology. We are booking Hives for running into reality in Geneva, New York, and London. Then we're going to do our second UK MPS event, talking technology, again in September. So that's the sort of mix. So you've got a couple of big one-day events with the lives in Zurich and New York, and then you've got some topic-focused roundtable stroke networking events around UK model portfolio service and the Hive running into reality. But what you'll see from us on an event basis now across our core markets, which is effectively the US, UK, Switzerland, and Asia, is a consistent lineup of events. So we plan to be in each location more frequently with a mixture of different topics and different types of events for firms to engage with in a variety of ways.
Stephen, I recently I read that it's a form of wrestling entertainment. So the WWE, right? The average superstar wrestler works 350 days out of the year. And I said to myself, well, what are they doing for the other 15? Because we're working round the clock here. And we too are global. So no sympathy from us there as you talk about the events and the momentum and the publications that we have. Like, this is a round the clock 365 day a year.
So who's your favorite wrestler, Mike? And I only know one name, maybe two. So
gosh, do I pull the Hulk Hogan or the Andre the Giant? Am I supposed to go that old and date myself?
That is dating yourself, I think. Yeah,
it is.
Yeah.
Michael, I was really wondering where you were going with that. I thought we might be about to announce the debut of Wealth Mosaic Wrestling.
Listen, we're always looking for a keynote. So if one of the superstars is available and wants to pop on in and talk, we're happy to entertain that conversation.
Andre the Giant's views on family offices.
Yeah, unfortunately, he's passed, as has
He has.
Hogan, the two that I mentioned there. So we'll have to find another reference point.
Yeah. Since Stephen's talking about what events we've got coming up, tell people about what content we've got coming down the tracks too. So we've got our second edition of Mosaic under development at the moment. That's going to be a special theme of Switzerland as a wealth centre, and we also got an in-depth focused exploration of family offices. And we're already looking ahead to our third edition, which is going to be themed around the client as a focus. And then the other big exciting thing we've got just launching now is a special project on the model portfolio solutions market in the United Kingdom. That's coming off a discussion event we hosted in London earlier this month. And we think there's a lot of potential and a lot of interest in that market's future. So we're planning a dedicated report, an annual research project to take the pulse of the MPS market, as well as video podcast and webinar opportunities. So that's going to be just the first of a series of dedicated projects that we're going to be hosting on our new website, which is going to be, I think, including family offices and a few others. Stephen, what did you have in mind for that?
What have we got? I mean, there's lots to go for,
Mm.
right? In issue 3, which will be in September of Mosaic, we're going to look at the clients. I think looking forward, we're going to be in Singapore a few times in the not too distant future. So probably a profile of the Singapore jurisdiction. We do quite a lot, or we engage with quite a lot of firms that are very focused on the US RIA space. So I think a profile of that segment makes sense. I know, Douglas, you're a big fan of the regulatory environment, so we should
Yeah, I
probably do a
am.
bit of a deep dive into the regulatory environment because, hey, you can't get away from it.
Yeah.
I think M&A, big topic, both on the wealth tech side as well as on the wealth manager side. We've obviously, we work with firms like Wealth Tech Strategy Partners that are sort of engaged in some of those areas, and there's a lot going on. And those, the money that's come into the space is kind of changing a lot of certainly the landscape of players in the market. So there's probably something to do there. But the world is our oyster in many ways in terms of the themes. There are a lot of things to look at. So Mosaic as a publication, as well as this podcast, will be mechanisms for us to talk to, engage with, and learn more about a lot of different areas.
A lot of that is going to be the new website that we're building, right? Which is going to be, a kind of massively upgraded venue for everything that we're doing. Mungo, Stephen, do you think you could talk a little bit about that? Because you're the ones who are most in the weeds of developing that exciting new project.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, over the last couple of years, really, we've spent a lot of time investing time into really thinking and doing a good level of engagement with our community around what site makes sense, right? I think through that process, what we've landed on is really building a much more, the best way of saying it is probably a much more deep index knowledge resource platform. So taking what was once a website and turning it much more into a platform with a lot more almost expected and then future-proofed features, really. So yeah, over the next 3 to 6 months, we've got after engaging a development partner, we're going to be rolling out over the next 3 years a number of phase developments to a new platform. Phase 1 will go live. We're aiming for September 2026. Don't hold me to that. We'll see as it develops, because we want to make sure that what we do put into the market really fits the brief. But yeah, ultimately what we're doing is we're taking what was once kind of a fairly stripped back directory. We're immensely proud of that directory, but ultimately we know that it could be so much richer. So that's what we're really trying to build in. So what does that look like in terms of new features? So whether that be real-time reporting, whether that be a personalized portal that you can then, customize knowledge feeds, RSS feeds, or enable a bit of a preference capture to then, recommend content to different personas. As we discussed earlier in this podcast, we are servicing a very big cohort of individuals with a number of different personas in there. So each user experience needs to be tailored to that. I'll let Steve talk further about the taxonomy system and how we're going to develop that, but we're looking at betting in a lot more tagging at premium levels so that people can be really directed and informed through our site. We're working around a recommendation engine. We've got to make sure that one of the things that we really hold true here at Wealth Mosaic is that we don't want to provide a bias. We want to try and make a platform where it is fairly flat in terms of structure. We want to basically enable people to find the right information, but we don't necessarily want to put it front and center in a paid activation. Ultimately, we want to connect people, right? So direct messaging, social, LinkedIn, pulling that kind of social audience from what is ultimately LinkedIn's great, but we all know it's somewhat decaying. It's flooded with AI. It's maybe on a certain level of downturn. We want to take our community and build a social platform within our website. Ultimately, what do we want to do? We want to have a fuss-free directory and platform, that people can search, can access in a very easy way. And there's a number of, fine details that how we do that. Separate to that kind of user experience side of things, we really want to start building in a unified environment. So currently we're quite fragmented in terms of media hosting over here, or service pages being in documentation rather than on a site. So just standard web practices. We want to really bring that into the site so people know what we're doing. They can access events and register through the platform. They can view and download content through our site, whether that be our reports, research, or anything else. And we're really, really excited about what we're going to bring to market. It's going to be, we're quite keen on the kind of word of like, it's going to be transformative for us, really. It's going to take us from our old site into the new, and hopefully all of our users, like I mentioned, those 40,000 people that hit the current site are going to have a much better experience, and we're going to be able to work with those individuals in a much more deep way, but by providing content that really matters to them. Steve, perhaps you could talk a little bit more about, from the analyst perspective, research perspective, all that kind of taxonomy perspective, about how we build this, what data do we decide as being relevant, and just give the audience a bit of a preview into what we're building out of the taxonomy system.
The first thing for me is the website has to be a showcase of everything we do. And at the moment, the current website isn't a showcase of everything we do. There's a lot in there, and it's sometimes tricky to find. We've got 10,000 business and solution profiles now within the directory. One of the first goals of the new website is to allow them to be more visible. They're going to be tagged to more areas, so country level, segment level, theme level, maybe persona level, maybe AUM level, different lenses through which a user can access all of those providers and then discover who might be right to work with for their firm. On the flip side of that, for vendors, obviously, it's a much stronger positioning engine that allows them to be positioned by segment, by geography, by size, by themes, by the things that they want to be positioned to, discovered for, and kind of famous for, if you will. So getting the directory in a much stronger shape with a better taxonomy is one core element. Overlaying that with search, so allowing search to support the discovery of that taxonomy in the directory. Profiles themselves, so your business and solution profiles are going to get I've got a big revamp, so they're going to be really attractive, really well built, great microsites for firms to really position who they are, what they do, why they're relevant, and give potential buyers a whole load of reasons to engage with them, whether it's content, whether it's forms, whether it's other people, and then we'll have people profiles in there. So that's the directory side, building on our core resource, making it much more powerful for both sides of the marketplace. Then there's the content. We've already got a great knowledge hub, but we're going to overlay that with a better taxonomy to support discovery, so firms can look at content like the podcast in more detail, find it more easily, engage with it more consistently. We've got a whole bank of reports. We've got our magazine. We've got events. We're basically building a platform that will allow each of those individual activities to be more easily consumed and engaged with by users. And that should really support, what we're trying to deliver at the Wealth Mosaic for the industry.
Doug, can I just add though, how exciting is this? And this is what we're talking about is a future state where this is as amazing as the site is today. We're talking about 3 months away when this evolution will take place. And the first time I sat down with Stephen and Mungo, and they laid out this vision of us becoming what essentially Verbo has become, or Airbnb for the travel industry. Think about the Wealth Mosaic sitting within, I picture us sitting within a boardroom or a meeting room as product leaders, as executives are talking about the challenges that they're experiencing and coming to us to find those solutions to those challenges. It's interesting. A number of years ago, and this was a punch to the nose, a very well-respected chief operating officer said to me, it was in a prior life, and with a fintech company, and she said, Mike, you are a solution in search of a problem. And that's a terrible place for a fintech to be, right? Just tell me what you could solve for. But as I think about us, we're a platform that's offering solutions to the problems here. And that's well needed. Stephen just went through pretty quickly, 10,000 providers on there. These are real amazing numbers. And when leaders are seeking solutions to the challenge, it's such an honor to be the core there. where they flip open their laptop in a meeting room and say, okay, let's go to the Wealth Mosaic and let's see what our options are there and let's dive in deeper. There's no one else doing that for these executives. They're sort of searching on their own or trying to walk conference halls to understand what's new, what's out there, who's offering what. Now you have this grounded, centered, massive directory that's really powerful, that we're so excited about this. We're so incredibly excited about this. And it's 60, 90 days away from production. So excited.
Completely. And just to overlay on that as well, I mean, Stephen quite often says, and we quite often say together, it's very much the tip of the iceberg. What we have, we're very proud about what we've built over the last 10 years. But, we're talking about a number of directories now, the future kind of product development roadmap that Stephen and I are working on, around all of these future directories that can come into this mix. The future is a lot more comprehensive, and we're very excited to deliver a lot against it. We look at the tech and data marketplace, we look at the consulting and research marketplace. These are quite robust on our platform. Those future directories, I think, will add a lot more context around it. And Steve, I mean, if you want to talk to them just briefly, I know you've mentioned them lightly, but when you talk about asset management or banking, custodian, or education and training, these future directories, and this kind of focus wheel that we're working with our developers around really engaging dynamic elements on our site and further directories. Is there anything more you want to add for the podcast on that?
Well, I can't say no after that, can I, Mungo? So what I would say is the founding principle of the Wealth Mosaic in building a directory was to cover off all the main business needs of any wealth management firm and its clients. So any product or service that a wealth management business needs to consume to run that business and or to service its clients is something we would want ultimately in the Wealth Mosaic. So whether that's investment management or trust and fiduciary or PR and marketing or bank and custody or education and training and private client assets, all of that stuff, that is the foundational element of what we're trying to build. And then, we layer on top of that the content and the events to really build a strong ecosystem and community that supports all of the elements that wealth managers care about to, as I say, run their business and service their clients.
Yeah, completely. Right. Just to add on that slightly, one of the massive components of our directory is not that it's fantastic for those users that Mike and Stephen both talked to there. It's also a phenomenal positioning and exposure tool for our vendor marketplace or our clients. When we talk about our membership at the Wealth Mosaic, we quite often see it as, you could see it in one lens as a premium microsite, like with any directory platform or solution in the market. You have those premium listings that sit above the others. But equally, there's so much more that membership unlocks within the Wealth Mosaic. By enabling these, your membership with the Wealth Mosaic, you then have a place, a hub, an ability to post all the content. So if you work with us for events, or you work with us in the content, or you work with us in the podcast, by having that membership layer, that premium microsite on the Wealth Mosaic, you then have a brand extension really worth having on the Wealth Mosaic. Michael, you quite often talk to some of the your prospects or network in the market, and they come back with feedback saying, why do I need a website if I have such a premium experience with the Wealth Mosaic? That might be true for a smaller stage company that's doing proof of concept and just wanting getting in the market versus obviously a larger institutional client, but there's some real value in having that premium layer, on our site and our directory. It's an unlock for everything else, and it's also a massive amplification factor for all other engagements with the Wealth Mosaic. So really something to look at. And obviously, as we roll out the new platform, we'll be doing a lot of marketing and education around why our vendors should shift to a membership over just single-use services with the Wealth Mosaic.
Mungo, it's interesting because as powerful as the platform is today, I guess I'll sound a little bit cliche, but what you're describing is you've seen nothing yet. You've seen nothing yet.
Completely.
And far be it from the kid from Brooklyn, New York, to quote Churchill here on this call, but never give in, right? We're not giving in. We're going to keep on developing. And this is an enormous responsibility that we have at the Wealth Mosaic, and we don't take it lightly. We take it very, very seriously. So as powerful as what you've seen, you ain't seen nothing yet. It's going to get better and better and continue to evolve, where we are core to these key conversations that are taking place around the globe. And that is a tremendous responsibility, again, that we do not take lightly here.
Completely. It's a phenomenal opportunity, and I think where it's community led, right, it's market driven, people are asking for this. We assign the reality that there is so much more we can do for our community, and that is our goal. Make a platform that's community driven, but is really purposeful for them. And we will do everything in our power to do that, whether it's editorial, whether that's events, whether that's podcasts, whether that's a really robust platform that you can navigate in a very fuss-free manner. That is our mission statement, and we're working towards it.
Before we sign off, shall we each briefly give an idea of where we think Wealth Mosaic is heading?
Well, wealth is changing, and the wealth industry needs resources like TWM. So we're building a global community built on a powerful directory that will grow and grow to meet the broader needs of the wealth industry and its clients. More events, better directory, more content, bigger community, and really encompassing and hosting a lot of the trends that are driving change across the industry, and you'll be able to access that within the TWM platform.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, as I mentioned before, I think that Wealth Mosaic is the town square of the wealth management industry. It's going to grow with that community, and as the needs of its members evolve, it's going to be there for the highs and the lows. It's going to change in line with its members' needs. And I think the other dimension of what the future of Wealth Mosaic is going to look like is there's just going to be more, more events, more content, more connections, and more opportunities. Margaret?
Yeah, I think we've wrapped it up nicely there. I think Michael's reference right at the beginning of this podcast, in relation to we're on a mission to ultimately become the single source of truth is quite a cliche now almost, but a global source of truth, a place where people can interact and a brand that they can interact with that offers real value. Not just here's the generic, but here's some real value and here's the people behind it driving that change. Click a button, connect here. So I think that's an absolute must for us. And what's our goal? We want to remove the barriers between innovators and the global wealth management community. We want to connect these individuals and drive change in our industry. And I think we've got a very good opportunity to do that. And I think we've done it very well for the last 10 years. And it's only up from here.
And then finally, Michael.
Oh, Douglas, describing us as town square, I don't think any of us could have put that better. Leave it to our brilliant editor to do that. Really like that. Well, I want to think for us here, being part of the daily routine is the aspiration that we have. So Stephen and Mungo, and you've heard me say this quite a bit, wake up in the morning, do your Wordle, do your connections, check CNN, check the BBC, make us core to your morning here. Whether you're on site at an event, whether you're having one of the more exclusive dinners with us at a roundtable Hive-like event, whether you're just reading, making a new connection, 1 to 2 a week, really, really powerful. And that's where we like to see ourselves, as part of that daily routine here, where leaders are coming to us for the information that they need in real time, can make real decisions, and also connect with this broader community, as you described, the town square.
Well, that's that for the first episode of Wealth Mosaic in Conversation. Future episodes we got coming up include the Wealth Mosaic in Conversation with Object Way, where Stephen will be talking to its CEO, Luigi Marciano, at its most recent client conference in Sorrento. Then we'll be speaking to Ian Carnell, the CEO of Vast Advisor, and we'll be returning to Sorrento for more Wealth Mosaic and Conversation, and speaking to some of the leading lights of the wealth tech community in the United States in future episodes. So look forward to getting in touch with you then.